Hello, and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and we have an exciting show for you today. I have three lovely ladies with me in studio today. These women are women of God, women of strong faith, women who enjoy serving others, and just women who have a big heart. And they have been gracious enough to come on the show to share a little bit of their life journey in hopes of inspiring and encouraging those who might be tuning in today. So, without any further delay, let me do this honor of introducing my guests, Miss Dion Jennings, Miss Beverly Wilson, and Miss Felisa Connor. I'm sorry about that. Pause. I got a brain freeze real quick. Ladies, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you, thank you, thank you. How are you doing?
Doing great.
Great,
Good,
great.
good, good, doing
Awesome,
good.
awesome.
hmm
Well, before we jump into our topic for today, I'd like to give you all an opportunity to just tell everybody a little bit about yourself. So I'm going to start off with you, Beverly. If you would, just share with the audience, tell us a little bit about who is Beverly.
Okay, my name is Beverly Wilson, and I'm originally from Dayton, Ohio. Right now, I live in Plano, Texas, as well as an HR company. And I just love the Lord, and Dion is my cousin. Um,
Mhm.
and that's really all there is to tell about me.
All right, that's fair enough. All right, we got a little family affair going on here. So since you called Dion out as your cousin, I'm gonna jump to Dion. Cousin Dion, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Dion. My name is Dion Jennings, and I actually was born in Texas. Right, I was born in Abilene, Texas, and but grew up in Dayton, Ohio. I am single. I'm single. Been single for a long time, and I'm a HR professional as well, and I live in Plano, Texas as well. Yeah.
All right, all right.
Mhm.
And last but not least, Felisa, would you please tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Hello. I'm glad to be on the podcast tonight. As you said, my name is Felisa Connor, and my family is originally from Louisiana. And so, but we've lived in Texas for a very long time. So, while my older siblings went to school in Louisiana, I didn't go to school until I got to Texas. So, I am from a fairly large family. I have three brothers, three sisters. One of my sisters deceased. So I come from a big family, and I have two daughters. I'm married. I have two daughters, and I have four grandchildren. I have three granddaughters and a grandson. And my background, mostly career wise, has is it's mainly been in municipal government for almost 30 years, but always with working in the planning and community development field, a lot of that. So I've enjoyed a life of public service for the most part. I currently work for a nonprofit, and it's really in line with my family. I come from a family of servants. On my mom's side, a lot of people teaching and in public service. My dad even worked for the city of Garland for many, many years before he passed away. And then on his side of the family, I come from a family of educators. So we're used to public service, a lot of people in law enforcement. So it was only fitting that I would jump right into some type of career like that. So that's me.
All right, awesome, awesome. So, of course, you ladies come from broad backgrounds, and again, as I started off the show right out the gate, was you all are lovers of serving.
Hmm.
So that is awesome, and it was part planned to have you three together just because
Hmm.
of the commonalities of interest that you have. So that's awesome. So one thing that I'm interested in, as with any journey in life, you live long enough, you're destined to go through some challenges in life, but there's always a place where it begins. And so I want to tail off a little bit more into your beginnings by asking you, what was it like for you growing up? And you can share with us any fond memories that you have about growing up, as well as if there's any specific challenge that sticks out to you that you had to endure and perhaps overcome. I'd be interested in hearing some of that as well. So I'll start back with you, Beverly. Please tell us, what was it like for Beverly growing up in Ohio? What was that like for you?
Oh, that was very different. I didn't have what you would call the normal childhood.
Mhm.
My father left when I was around 10, and because of that, um, my mother just did not handle it well. And so, probably about right around 10, I kind of became mother and father to my brothers as well as my mom. She ended up having some mental health issues. So, that really did lead me to become the adult of the house very quickly. Um, Not that it was a bad thing, it was just a different type of childhood. Um, we have always gone to church, which was definitely a help through a lot of my childhood. Um, it was, again, not a bad childhood, just different. It was, when you're 10, how to make sure your brothers get to school, how to make sure that groceries are in the house. Those are things that most 10-year-olds don't have to worry about. Well, that was my life. Those were the things that I had to make sure happened every day. So I didn't necessarily get to have what most people would consider a normal childhood. Um, but it did help me, it helped framed me to be able to take care of the things that needed to be taken care of. Um, Naturally, I'm a nurturer anyway, and it just started real early. Um, I do have fond memories of, being able to go to Frisch's Big Boy on Sunday afternoons, for that great big, what is that?
Uh,
The chocolate cake with the little ice cream in between. That's my fondest memory. Um, uh, my, my middle brother is mentally handicapped. And so, because of that, that also made life slightly different, because he needed special needs. And so, making sure he got on his bus meant, I may have had to go to school later or get out of school earlier to make sure that he was home, or, that he was picked up off of his bus. Um, it was just a very different childhood. But I can honestly say that the Lord was there the whole way. Um, and because of it, I feel that it helped put me in the mindset to be able to help others that their childhoods are different. I gravitate towards women who haven't had it the easiest, who need that extra help. My family likes to say I like to collect young ladies, because I am there as a resource to them, because I know how it is not to have somebody, when you're trying to figure out those life lessons and you don't necessarily have a parent there, or you may have a parent, but they may not be able, for whatever reason, to give you what you need. Um, so I like to be there and make myself available to those young ladies who do need it. Or you may have young ladies who do have great parents available to them, but they just need that extra love. Um, so again, different childhood, but still a good one.
That's good.
Awesome, awesome, and I appreciate your transparency and sharing that. One can only imagine what that would have felt like to be that young and assuming such great load of responsibility, but to still do it nevertheless without. It doesn't. At least it doesn't appear that that you experienced a lot of complaining and fussing. You just kind of said, "Hey, this is my circumstances. This is what it is," and in between that and just leaning on God, you allowed him to direct you and guide you accordingly. Again, even at such a young age. So that is a blessing in itself as
Mother
well.
bought a new fan.
All right. So, um, Dion, I'll turn to you. Tell us, what was it like for you growing up?
my childhood was I would say pretty good, pretty good. It wasn't too bad at all. Both of my I grew up with both of my parents. My father, my mother was in the household. Um, we had the ability to just go on trips and hang out. I have to say my Beverly is my cousin on my father's side, and then I have my mother's side, so I was closer to my mother's side of the family, honestly. was close to my mother's side of the family. Overall, the relationship with my mother is very, 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 very strong. Like we would go every summer. I would go to my grandmother's house, which is in Austin, in Austin. We would go to Austin and hang out there, or we would have family reunions in. We would go to Ridgeland, South Carolina, and things like that. So that dynamic on my mother's side, is great. On my father's side, particularly with my father, one of the things, we didn't have a close relationship, and one of the things I would always desire is to have a father-daughter relationship, right? Wanted to have that, what, daddy, do this, show me how to change a tire, show me how to do that. I didn't have that because he is a disciplinarian, right? This what you need to do. This how you need to do it. This need to get it done. So, but overall, my childhood was great. My fond memories was waking up in the morning on Christmas, and I'm an only child, right? So I'm an only child, and I was like, ooh, look at all this. But I also desire to have like a brother or sister, right? So I desire to have a brother or sister, and one of the things I can say, one of the things my mom did very well was that she really tried to instill and make sure that I had people around me that, hey, you're not going to be that spoiled person, that she tried to do it, right? She did that, and I had sisters that grew up with me, Allison and Stephanie. I consider them my sisters growing up, right? They still close to this day. But also one of the things is that, one of the things into my mom and my grandma also instilled the fact of having God, right, in your life. Some of the things I remember is that my mom would, teach me how to pray, right? Teach me how to pray. And then my grandma, what's the word? Solidifying that in the end. I didn't understand it sometimes growing up, right? Because I was like, I would call my grandma and say, hey, you know what? I have this stuff going on over here. Can you pray for me? Because you got a closer relationship to God than I do. And things would happen. So, but overall, I say my childhood was pretty good. Nothing too bad, but that relationship with my father, as a child,
Hmm.
I wish that was a little closer, that father-daughter relationship.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Mhm.
And again, thank you for that transparency and sharing that. That sounds like an awesome childhood.
Mhm.
And for Lisa, what was it like for you growing up in this big family? What was it like? What was it like as a child? What was that whole childhood experience? Any challenges, as well as any fond memories that you have from that time?
It was so growing up for me in a large family. My mom came from a large family. My dad's family kind of mid-sized, so we left Louisiana, where most of our family lived, moved to Texas, and if I had to describe my childhood, I'd say it was very rich, but also challenges. And so many of the things that happened that were challenging, I didn't realize that some of those things were really that bad until later on. But I grew up in a very close family. We spent a lot of time together, like we were always together. And so I had um, the three older siblings, that five of us grew up in the house together, and I had two sisters that didn't grow up with us, but they came to spend time with the family in the summer. So I'm the youngest girl, but I have a brother that's younger than me, and so he and I are probably the closest. And like Beverly, I also had a sister. My oldest sister was special needs. She got sick when she was like 4, and so it caused some brain damage. So I think that you learn a lot about being mindful of others when you have a special needs a family member. It teaches you something about being mindful of others and what it means to care about someone other than yourself, because when you deal with another person's disability, it really does take that entire household being aware of what to do. Like when my sister would have a seizure, what we were supposed to do, understanding about her medicine, making sure that was timely if my mom wasn't there. So there was that aspect of our family. And I can just remember when we would travel back to Louisiana for to spend time with our family. That was some of my most joyous times because, my grandfather had a farm, so we used to go visit his farm, and city girls seeing hogs and goats and picking pecans and picking blackberries, because everything, like a lot of the things that you see on TV about families in the South, my family did that. I'm talking about making homemade jam, uh, picking greens from the garden, the hot water cornbread, and having whole meals without meat. That you just had all the different vegetables. Making chow chow, sitting out on the front porch, and I can even remember some nights where we would even sleep on the front porch with my cousins at my grandmother's house. And so like I told you before, when we moved here, my dad started working for this lumber company, and then he later started working for the city of Garland. And for a long time, my mom didn't work. And I remember when we bought our first house um, in Texas, then my mom, it was like around 1974, and so my mom was upset because my dad would not. He would not get her convert the garage to a den. So she went and got a job at Kraft Foods so she could pay for it herself. And so, just lots of fun memories like that. And what I do remember about my family through all of the highs and the lows, we always prayed together. Because even
Mm-hmm.
as children, even though when we moved to Texas, my mom was mad because my dad got this 2-bedroom house. So we left a 3-bedroom house in Louisiana to come here to this 2-bedroom, 1 bath. And I don't even call that thing a full kitchen because you couldn't have more than 2 people in there at the same time to move there. But they had this huge king size bed in their bedroom. And every night we got down around her bed and we sang, "Oh, How I Love Jesus." And we prayed together like every
Mm-hmm.
night. And then when things would come up later in life, like before we got the house and they were trying to get the down payment together, we came together as a family. We prayed for that, and we did work on the house to help pay to cover the down payment for the house. And I can remember there were times I had a one brother who was a little more challenging than others. And so I remember one time he got into some big trouble, and I can remember all of us coming together once again and praying for that. And even when my brother went to Desert Storm, coming together as a family and praying for that. So my entire life has been characterized by praying and trusting God, and I think that that's some of my fondest memories. And even when I think about the things that were challenging, my father was an alcoholic, and he eventually recovered from that, but he died very young. And so one of my biggest regrets is about that wasted time of him not being able to manage that, and then the time that we wasted dealing with the alcoholism for so many years. And then, by the time everything was by the time that was all better, then before you know it, he was gone, because he died at 52. He had lung cancer, but he never told anybody he had cancer. So he never sought treatment for that or anything. He just, kind of suffered in silence. And so when I remember him, I remember some wonderful things about him. Like, he would take me and my little brother to these picnics all the time for his job. And my dad was a singer. I mean, he had a beautiful voice, and he always sang in a quartet and all of that. So I remember those things about him. But my biggest regret, though, is that the he wasn't able to manage the alcoholism, and that, we wasted a lot of time, because that's painful for a family. And even though at the time when I was younger, I didn't think it was my problem, I just thought it was my mom and my dad's problem. But as I got older, I did realize how that affected the the entire family. Because, like, if you get DWIs and all those things, that causes the family to lose income, and you have all those things going on, but even in spite of all those things, God always took care of us. And so I'm grateful. I'm grateful for my childhood. I'm grateful for what I've learned. And so, in spite of the adversity, still, we were good because we were a family.
Awesome, awesome. And again, thank you for sharing in your transparency with that. Two common threads I'm hearing from all three of your childhoods. Clearly, prayer was is obviously present through all three of you, regardless of your individual circumstances. But then I'm also hearing, of course, that void in the relationship between father and daughter. And as a father of a daughter, and how much I treasure that relationship, and how I couldn't imagine not being in it. I guess I'm curious to know, or I should say, perhaps, what would you say for that dad who may not understand the importance about the presence and the relationship building between father and daughter? What would you say to that dad who probably needs to, be made aware of how significant that is for his daughter to have that connection, to have that bond with her father? What would you say to that? I'll start with you, Dion.
Um, I would say that um, a father's a father's presence is important due to the fact that he adds a different element of a mother, right? So, sometimes the mother is, the soft one. The mother is the one who gives you, I mean, guidance, but from her perspective. But having a dad there who's able to um, teach you and guide you and say, you know what, this is why you should do this and this is how you should be treated. Yes, all these things are important, but when you want somebody to treat you like this, right? Especially even if they don't have a even if they don't like believe in God, right? But they know that the right things to do. They know how somebody should be treated. They know that they should make sure that's not only about just taking care of the family, but you have to have that emotional support. And what does that emotional support look like from a male? I think that would be something that's important. And not to be afraid to share that emotional support or emotion from a male perspective. I know sometimes in the world, and well, not sometimes, most of the time in the world, you got to be hard and strong, and you don't have to show that soft side from a male perspective. But as a female, you need to see that too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Beverly, you said your dad left at an early age. What if you could
Oh,
say
yeah.
something to him right now, like, "Dad, you're not being there. This is that void. What does that mean to you, and what do you wish he understood about how that impacted him leaving your family like that?"
Let's see. I guess more than anything, because my father is no longer here.
Mm-hmm.
We lost him. Oh, I want to say about 10 years ago,
Okay.
9, 10 years ago. He was also an alcoholic,
Mm.
um, and when he left, it was very, very hard on the family. And I know for me personally, because I was probably the closest to my father, hurt because my best friend was no longer there. And so, if anything, it would be a, a daughter really needs um,
It's like you're breaking up a little bit.
Mhm.
I'll jump back to you, Beverly. Your internet is struggling a little bit, but I am going to give you an opportunity to speak to that. Um, Felisa, I know you actually started to talk about that a little bit, but how significant was it for you to have that close relationship with your dad? Why was that so necessary for you?
Well, the interesting thing about my dad is that I talked a little bit about him being an alcoholic, but my dad was affectionate. He was affectionate. I think that as I got older, there are things that I became bitter about, and the wall that was raised that came up between us was really my, it was a wall that I put there.
Hmm.
I wanted to shield myself from, like, I guess whatever the challenges were between he and my mother. And I learned things and I knew things that I shouldn't have known. And so in many ways I hardened my heart so that I didn't have to feel about things that didn't fit in with my idea of what the family should look like. But my father was an affectionate person in the sense that, he demonstrated love towards, at least towards, I'm saying mostly me and my little brother, because we were his natural children in the home. When my parents got married, my mom had a daughter, two boys, and my dad had uh, two daughters. And then when they got married, they had me and my brother. And so there was some space between us and the other children. And so, like I said, he spent a lot of time. He did spend a lot of time with us. And, but I think I was made to feel a certain way about the alcoholism, and then just some of the challenges between he and my mom. And, you don't want to choose or whatever. I just knew I didn't want him to go. I didn't want him to leave and not be in the home. But he was there all through my youth and growing up. But the barrier that was there, I would have to say I was the one who put that barrier up. And so, um, what I learned from my dad, and my dad had a very easy, quick smile, beautiful smile. So actually, me and my brother both have his smile. We both look just
Hmm.
like my dad. And what I learned from him is that a father should always provide for his children, because despite him being an alcoholic, he always went to work. I mean, he had an amazing work ethic. So he never called in sick for anything. And he always went to work. So I learned that a father should always provide for his family. And then from him, there was this sense of security that you could feel at night, because my mom worked nights, but he was the one that was there with us during the day. And even though he would be drinking on his day off, he always picked me and my brother up from school, because every other day we rode with the neighbor to school, and we walked home every day, rain, sleet, or snow. Except for those days when he was off work, and he picked us up. And so,
Hmm.
um I wish that I would not have tried to be more of an adult than I should have been, if that makes
Gotcha.
sense. Because I feel like there were ways that I was out of line. And I can remember one Sunday morning I was up and I was praying. And I didn't typically say the model prayer, but I was up that morning and I was praying. And I got to the part of the prayer where it says, "Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors." And it's like the Holy Spirit stopped me right then. And I immediately thought about my father. And if I'm forgiving him, if I want God to forgive me, but I'm looking at my forgiveness towards him, then I'm going to be in trouble, because I'm not being very forgiving, because God never told me to obey my parents. If they did XYZ, I'm just supposed to obey my parents. And so I called my dad and I apologized. I told him, I always had the responsibility to be respectful as a child, and I was wrong. And I
Mm.
asked him to forgive me for that. And then that did change our relationship. And I'm glad I did that, because he died 3 years later. And he
Hmm.
walked me down the aisle when I got married the first time, but he was very, very sick. I mean, apparently the cancer he had was in his lungs and had gone through the weakest part of his body. And like I said, we didn't know that at the time. We just knew he was in a lot of pain. Didn't know anybody who had cancer, prior to that, so we couldn't even recognize the signs. So I think that he did the best he could with what he knew, because one of the things we learned later on is that my grandfather was a very affectionate guy, but a man, but my not my grandmother, his mom, and he never remembers her ever telling him that she loved him. Although my
Hmm.
grandfather did, but he never experienced that with with his mom, and so I think that that's why the some of the it could be a challenge with him, I guess, with him and my mom and that relationship, but those same challenges didn't exist with his children.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Again, your transparency has been powerful in sharing that about your dad, and it even it's a testament to him, even in the mix of his battle with illness, with his mix in his battle with alcoholism. Clearly, there was something in him that said,
Hmm.
For whatever reason, I'm caught up in this situation. I can't neglect my family. I can't
Right.
neglect my children. So, and again, that to me, I just take that as that was God in him saying, "Hey, yeah, you're struggling with some stuff, but I'm gonna keep you upright enough to be able to still do what you need to do to be the
Right.
provider that you talked about." Um, I want to jump back to you real quick, Beverly. I know you had a little technical difficulty, but we still with you. I wanted you to have an opportunity to finish out what you were saying about the importance that the importance of having the dad around, and and the fact of what you would have liked for him to understand about how it impacted you, his presence not being there for you. Are you able to hear me?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
I'm sorry. My connection seems to be a little unstable. So
It's okay.
Dad
We're
is
gonna work with it.
there, especially for daughters. Um, he is one of the most important men in her life, and he makes a huge difference. Whether consciously or unconsciously, a lot of the choices women make are because of their fathers. And when a father isn't around, women don't necessarily have certain things to base their decisions on because they don't have that guidance. So having that dad, just having his presence makes a huge difference because it helps you in so many facets of your life. It helps you make so many decisions. And oftentimes men don't know that those little things, having somebody, just tell you the things that should or should not happen, the things that you should and should not accept. All of those things make a difference, and they really do impact every facet of your life. And oftentimes we don't think of it. We think of, oh, they impact a relationship, but they impact your job. They impact the way you deal with other women, the way you deal with your children, just the way that you look at life in general. So, yeah, having a father around makes a huge difference. And I wish more men understood that it's not just about the money. It helps to provide for your children, no doubt. But there's so many other aspects that having a father in your life, it really, really does make a difference.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, I appreciate you sharing that with us. And I know we stayed on this subject a little bit longer, but I just felt like this was important. You all mentioned this, and I wanted to drive that point home to any man who's listening, or any daughter or who's listening. Understanding that that father daughter presence is everything. Like I said, I couldn't imagine not having that. And it's funny because as a dad, most dads, if you ask them, when a child is on the way, the go-to thing is you tend to want a son. I want a son to carry my name and all of that. And I was one of those guys. And then I find out you're gonna have a girl, and I'm like, mm, you know. But I tell you, the first time I held her, it was a wrap, and it's been a wrap ever since. So and I wouldn't change it for a thing because I see other men with sons, and I'm like, oh, that would drive me crazy to have a little boy. I gotta have a girl. Nah, I better hemmed him up. So I thank you for sharing that. I do want to ask you all as we transition a little bit further. Tell us about a time when again in life we have all kind of adversities and challenges, and some of them we've already discussed. But I'm curious to know if there's a particular challenge that you would like to share, a particular moment in time where you were hit with something that you just really weren't sure how you were going to navigate through that thing. um, if you would be so kind as to share what that story was, what that journey was like for you, and what did you have to do to uh, to persevere through that particular moment in time. So I'll start with you, Dion. Tell us about a time when you experienced such a thing in your life, and what was that like for you?
So the one thing that I could say that was in my life was that when I found out I couldn't have any kids.
Mm.
So I can't have any children. I was 36 years old when I found out. And I'm a checklist person, right? So I'm a checklist person. I was my plan. This was my plan in life. So I was gonna go to high school. I was gonna graduate. I was gonna get married at 25. I was gonna have my first kid at 28. I was gonna get my master's at 30, and then after 30, I was gonna get married and have 2.5 kids. That was my
All
plan.
right. 2.5 kids.
That was my plan.
All
Well,
right.
God had a different plan, obviously, for
Mm-hmm.
me. So at 36, I found out, and I went to the doctor for, well, Joseph, you have no idea what this is, but the normal women checkup, right?
Mm-hmm.
The normal woman checkup, and I was things was out of order, and she was like, you know what, you need to go to the specialty doctor. I was like, what? What is that? Because I was having, again, hot flashes, and well, all of us know what that is on this call. We do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to the doctor, and he went, and right then and there he was like, oh, you are in premenopause. I was like, what in the world is that? And he was like, well, that you're going through menopause early in life. They're not supposed to happen until 50 or plus. And I was like, oh, okay. And I said, well, what about children? He said, well, I don't think you're gonna have any. And I was like, I sat in that office for a second, and I was just looked at him like, he don't know what you're talking about. So went back to my primary doctor again. Went through it, went talked to her, same thing, and I was like, man. So I went back to the specialist, just to get some confirmation, a good confirmation, and it was confirmed. And I walked out that hospital, and I just busted out crying because
Oh,
my plan
wow.
was messed up, right? So busted out crying. The first person I called was my mama. I did. I called my mom, and she was like, I'm in Texas. She's in Ohio. She's like, Dion, what's going on? What's going on? What's wrong? And I'm like, I can't have any children. And she was like, she was like, okay, okay. Well, Deanna, that doesn't mean you can't have any kids. And I was like, no, I can't have any kids naturally. She was like, it's gonna be okay. And I'm in the middle of standing outside the hospital having this conversation, people walking around, and I didn't care. And so she was like, you know what, Dion, that doesn't mean you can't have kids. You can adopt. You can have whoever you're gonna marry can have kids. There's a lot of other ways to have kids, Dion. And I was, again, a process person. I
Mm-hmm.
have my order, and that wasn't sitting well with me. But after talking to I did talk to my mom a lot about that, as far as having kids. And babe, I think I even called you. I don't know. I think I may have at that particular. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I had a conversation, and as far as praying at that time, I wasn't really feeling it because I was a little mad. I know I shouldn't have been, but I was. And so, how I got over it, you know what? Honestly, it took time. It took time for me to get over it. I was going to church, and I was praying, but then I also um, recall, and at 36, you know what? I was in Texas, and I kept thinking about, because Kelsey and Trenton, which are Bev's kids, I was like, those are my kids too. you know didn't realize it at the time. I was doing things as far as taking them to church and stuff like that. And then I was also started thinking about how my family, we always call, out of respect, elder, out of respect, we call, I'm an aunt because I'm the oldest, even though my cousins. So it took a lot of talking, and then at a point, at a time frame, I did actually went to God and say, you know what, I don't know why you did this. There's a reason why, right? There's a reason why, but I came to acceptance. So that was one of the toughest things in my life.
Okay. And again, appreciate that transparency and sharing that.
Mhm.
I'm not going to begin to say I know what that's like because I don't, but I definitely empathize with that. And as you stated, nothing happens by accident when it comes to
Right.
God. Um, again, I go back to your love of service, your love of being there for other people. So who knows if this was part of the plan just so that you would have the availability to do things that you may not have otherwise been able to do. Had you had the responsibility of raising children. And as your mom shared with you, you're still having the opportunity to be in that motherly auntie type
Hmm.
role with other children and getting some fulfillment in that. So,
Yeah.
I applaud you for that. And again, relying upon God to help get you through what is otherwise a very trying and difficult time. Felisa, um, what would be that same question? What would be that moment for you that kind of sticks out that says, yeah, this hit a little different for me, and I wasn't sure I was going to be able to pull through, but I was able to eventually, work my way through that particular situation. What was that for you?
Oh my. I just started thinking back when you were asking that question and like, and what would be something good to share. And I guess really that had a great impact on my thinking and the way I approach life. And I think that the time I would share would be after I had my first daughter. So I Morgan, I was married, got pregnant with Morgan when I was 25 or 26, one of them. I think it was 25. But so had Morgan, and it was just a challenging pregnancy, from the beginning. I mean, I was sick every day. Like, I mean, from the time I got up until 7 p.m. at night, and it lasted actually for months. And so developed toxemia,
Mhm.
and I had trouble sleeping. I had morning sickness. I had sinus issues that wouldn't go away. And I had acne all over my back. It was
Mhm.
all kinds of stuff going on with that pregnancy. And so when I had Morgan for after the C-section, for some reason I wasn't able to sleep. Um, uh, just had lots of issues, and so uh, the toxemia had my blood pressure really high, so we had to do an emergency C-section with her because my blood pressure was 212 over 125. And then got home from the hospital with her. Oh my gosh, nobody prepared me for how painful the recovery from a C-section was. But something happened with my body. The doctor said that the stress of the pregnancy, all the fluid on the body, and I had a nerve. I have had some nerve damage in my face that made it look like I had a stroke. It was similar to Bell's palsy, but it wasn't the same. I lost the use of all the nerves on the left side of my face. My hearing was messed up, um, and my face was sore. Like everything on my left side of my face was sore, and so that I spiraled into just a state of depression. Like I didn't want to leave the house, and I did try at one point to go back to church after, like when Morgan was like 2 or 3 months old, but I could hear ringing in my ear like all the time. So like when the music was playing, it would be like these echoes that would come back two times. And so I just stopped trying to go to church, and I went home, and it was just really bad. It was really bad because I had her in September. I finally went back to work after 3 months. And then when I went to work, in my face, I'd gone to the doctor, and they told me that they couldn't do any more after this long period of steroids and all of that. He said that this was the best we could hope for. And so I remember being at home. They'd had a birthday party for my niece, and I stayed home. And there was a knock on the door, and this lady, this girl that I knew, she was the daughter of my mom's best friend, but we weren't really close or anything. But she knocked on the door, and she said, "I know this is gonna seem odd to you, but the Lord told me to come by and pray for you." And I had been in this place where I was barely hanging on. I mean, seriously, and I felt like, I couldn't talk to anybody about it. But it was like being in a dark tunnel, but there was this little speck of light at the end of the tunnel. And so when I would pray, I would just say, Lord, have mercy, because that was all I had. And she came in, she said, the Lord told me to come by and pray for you. And she prayed for me. And immediately that just did something for me. And I believed from that moment that I was healed. Now, I didn't look healed. The pain was still there, but I was able to lift my head up. I felt better by going to work and things like that. And I even eventually went back to church, even though it was very uncomfortable to be there. And so, fast forward to October of 1993. I was getting ready for church and I was putting on some makeup, and all of a sudden I realized, my face wasn't, it didn't hurt anymore. And I was able to, like, it was even to the point where even the nostril on the left side didn't even move. And I realized that everything was back as it was before. And I just began to praise God, and I called my mom and I told her, I finally understand truly what you mean, why Amazing Grace matters so much to you, because it was amazing that God carried me through that. And the evidence of me being healed it was a year and 1 month later that the healing manifested itself. But the Lord lifted me up out of a state of depression that I didn't know. I'm like, when people say I almost let go, I would have lost my mind if it hadn't been for God. I know that to be true, and I know him as a healer, and I know him as God who answers prayer, because he did that for me.
Wow. That's one of those you just kind of like marinate on that for a few moments and just let it rest there. Very powerful testimony, and sharing that. I appreciate you doing that. And you know, all you can say is but God,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and it was an opportunity in the midst of that storm that you were in. It was an opportunity for you to grow closer, and which is, for those of us on this call that are around you on Sunday mornings, and we can see how close God, you are to God, and this is just one of, I'm sure, many stories that you could tell
Yes.
why that is so, and why it's so
Yes.
easy. It comes so easy to you,
Yes.
just because of what He's allowed you to break free from, to overcome. So, to, like I said, to God be the glory on that one.
Amen.
All
Amen.
right, that's awesome. Beverly, same question for you. A time in your life, and I know you've already shared some pretty heavy stuff, and it may be the same thing. I don't know, but a time where you just thought, "Hey, I'm not sure how I'm gonna navigate through this thing." This is hitting different. I done been through some stuff since I was a kid, and could there be anything else on my plate that I got to deal with? Um, you know, any story that you
Oh,
have to share that had an impact
oh,
on you, that you weren't sure how you were gonna push through that thing, but you
oh.
managed to do so.
I would have to say, you know, you're right, because, starting when I was a kid, we were poor.
Mhm.
Po is the way, and it didn't even have the R to it. So I grew up understanding that, you have to make the best of whatever the circumstance is, good, bad, or whatever. You have to try to see the positive, and just try always to make the best. Um, and also growing up in my house, even though my parents separated, now my parents didn't actually get divorced until I was 19, but they separated when I was 10. Um, but my grandparents had always stayed married, and they got married when they were 14, and they literally stayed married until they died.
Mhm.
Um, and I was basically raised to think, you get married, you stay married, no matter what. Um, and so for my first marriage, I got married at 18, and we were married 20 years.
Mm.
Around this 16th year, things started getting pretty rocky. Um, he was in the military, and we really went through some ups and downs. Um, we had our kids, and it was one of those where you'd gotten all the signs that this probably wasn't the best thing, but it's make the best of it. Keep trying. Just keep doing it. It'll get better. It didn't get better. It got worse. And as we kept trying, because I just didn't want to give up, I wanted my kids to have their dad. And I figured you just keep trying, it will get better. Um, but with his military career ending, he was floundering. And so he took it out on me. So it got physically abusive. He hit me with my car. Um, the police stayed at our house quite a bit. And finally I said, this probably isn't the best for my kids. And one day the policeman said, look, the fact that I know your name isn't good. You got to be there for your kids. And if you keep this up, you won't be. So I was wrestling with what should I do? And one day I was making some spaghetti, and I will never forget this. I'm sitting there and I'm making spaghetti, and my son comes to me and he says, Mommy, come here. And I bend down and I said, What do you want, boo? And he says, I got to tell you something. Somebody told me to tell you it's time we leave Daddy. He's not for us. And I said, okay, boo, who told you this? And he said, I don't know, but I'm supposed to tell you that. I love you. And he ran away. I said, no, Trenton, come back here. Who told you this? He said, I don't know. I'm just supposed to tell you. I said, but what did the person look like? He said, I don't know. I didn't see him. I'm just supposed to tell you. I love you. He gave me a big hug. And I said, okay, God, I hear you. You've shown me in so many ways, but I wasn't listening. I get it. It took my 7-year-old son to come in the kitchen on that day, wrap his arms around me, and give me a message I just wasn't hearing. And as hard as it was for me, at that moment, I made the decision it was best for me and my kids to end the marriage. I had known this man since I was 17. I didn't know who I was because everything I did was wrapped up with him. And so it was very hard. I hadn't worked most of my marriage. I had gone to school, so I was educated, but I didn't know what I was going to do, where I was going to go, how we were going to make it. And he'd already shown me that he was not going to be helpful if this happened. So it was a very, very scary, scary time. I wanted to be sure I gave my kids the best, but I also didn't want to put them in harm's way. And that's where we were getting to. And I just didn't know how to do it. But that moment, that 7-year-old child wrapping his arms around me and telling me that made all the difference in the world. And in that moment, I chose to do what was best for us. And my husband came home and I said, we've tried and I will always love you. You gave me 2 beautiful kids. You will always mean the world to me. But this isn't healthy. It's not good. I'm not blaming you. I don't want you to blame me. I hope at some point we can come out of this and even be friends. But we have to end this. It's the best thing for us all. He didn't see it that way. So we had some court battles. It took us 2 years to get divorced, and he still refused to sign the court papers. He fought me over everything from a knife to a spoon. But in the end, I didn't ask for much. The few things I asked for were my kids and a few sentimental things. I didn't care that he had all the rest of it. The thing that was important to me was making sure my kids had a healthy, drama-free as it can be, life. and that they understood that mommy loves you, daddy loves you, just mommy and daddy can't be in the same household anymore. Um, and my kids actually told me later it was the best thing I did for them because they weren't happy. They didn't like the fighting. They were afraid for me. They were afraid for them. Um, so getting out of it was the very best thing that I could do. And although my belief was you stay married no matter what, that wasn't the plan. And so it was hard and it took a long time to get past it. It took a long time to put us back together. I felt like I failed. I'm a person that I don't fail. I don't mess up. I'm an A-type personality. I stick to it. But that time I needed to let go. And it took a lot to let go. Um, and I didn't want everybody else to see me break down all the time. The people at work saw me go from the size I was to barely a size 4. And they're looking at me and saying, hey, somebody, you take her, you make sure she has breakfast, you make sure she has lunch, you make sure she has dinner because she's literally withering away in front of us. And I was blessed to have great people in my life to help me get through it. And I never will forget, my boss said, you know, I know that you don't believe in divorce. I know that you think that you have to stick it out. But has it ever occurred to you that maybe God put you here right now so that you had the support system to make the changes you needed to make? And if it took your son, who barely reaches your kneecap, to tell you this, then maybe it's time that you really, really listen. And so, yes, that was a challenge. That was a hard thing, but it was the best thing for me. So I'm glad I did it. That's my
Wow.
story.
All right. All right. Again, I commend you for your transparency, your strength, and your courage to make a difficult decision. Anybody who's ever gone through a divorce, it's nothing like it because it's not the traditional "I quit you, I break up with you, we don't go together no more." It hits different, and so for you to share that and share it clearly, sharing it in your truth and authenticity, I thoroughly appreciate that, and I'm sure you just blessed somebody in sharing that story, and it gave me even confirmation. I don't know if you all paid attention to the title I gave to the show. Something you said that gave me confirmation of coming up with that title. You had to let go, and and that's the title of our show is letting go to letting God. And that's exactly what you did. And lastly on that is just it's just something about that mother son relationship. I don't care how old he is. He's gonna look out for his mama. I got
Yeah.
personal testimonies to that. So yeah, son says it's gonna resonate different, and it did for your safety, for your happiness, for your peace of mind, and the safety of your family. So I'm thankful that you did that, and we can fast forward to today because we all know this to be so. God didn't even let it stop there because he blessed you with a wonderful man who I know loves you dearly, a man of God and a cool brother to know in Amos. So he restored you in the midst of everything that went on. So again, God is good like that, and that's what He does. Even when we think everything is over with and that's the end of the story, no, He just provided you something even better. So that's awesome. That's awesome. Um, if you could say just one word to describe, what you go to, what's your go-to thing when you find yourself in the midst of dealing with adversity and challenges in life. What is that? What is that one thing that you do in order to help you get through difficult moments? And I'll start with you, Felisa. If you sum it up in one or two words, what is that one thing that you rely upon? If that's at the top of your list, when I'm going through, I do this.
I ask myself either I believe God is who He says He is, or I don't. And then and I do. So I say, I believe God. No matter what's going on, I say, I believe God because I think that it just comes right down to that. And if I'm trying to make a decision that's very hard for me, I ask myself what's going to please God the most. And if the thing is something that I don't want to do, I ask myself, is it more important for me to please myself or to please God? Because I mean, I want to be like Jesus. I want to do the things that He would do. And anybody who knows me, is a scripture in John chapter 8, where it's 8, I think 39, where it says, Jesus says, the Father is always with me, and He has not left me, because I always do what pleases the Father. And that's just blessed assurance, to me, to know that God is with me and He hasn't left me. And so I want to do what pleases Him, because I want the assurance of His presence and His protection.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's wonderful. What about you, Dion? Something that's hitting you today, a new challenge, a new adversity moment. You got a lot of things that you might do in those times, but what's your
Mhm.
number one go to? What do you go to and rely upon when you find yourself in such situations?
You know, I mean, God, obviously. I mean, I go to God, but I have to stop, right? I have to really stop first, and just take a minute and say, okay, you know what? Am I going to do it my way, or am I going to do it God's way? And sometimes it kind of it's hard because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I want to do my way. Most of the
Yes.
time I want to do my way. Really, to be honest with you, I really do. I want
Yes.
to do it my way because I think my way is the best way. So that's the truth. But I really have to stop and I have to take a minute. And then when I'm really having times I got to really think about. One of my favorite songs is oh my goodness, Smokey Norfolk. Oh my goodness, I forgot it. Oh my goodness, I said my favorite song and I remember off the top of my head.
Oh
Um,
my gosh. Oh,
oh my goodness, it's Smokey Norfolk. Oh
yeah.
my
Hmm.
I
goodness,
need you now.
yes.
There you go.
I need you now, and that's what
Mhm.
I go to, and then that helps me. So that's what
Awesome,
I do.
awesome. And Beverly, how about you? Something's come
For
across your
me,
plate?
it's always,
Go ahead.
whenever anything is happening, I truly, I truly feel like God is my father.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I mean, of course, He's my heavenly Father, but a lot of times I go to Him as if He is my Father right here, right now, in front of me. So I'm always first thing I do is I get still and I just start talking to Him
Mm.
and asking Him what I'm supposed to do. I need your advice. I need your
Yes.
guidance. I need you to show me, tell me, because I can't do it on my own. You don't want me to do it on my own.
Mhm.
And then I just get still and wait to hear. I really just wait to listen, um, especially if I have a lot of things that are going on from the outside. Sometimes I have to just go and sit in a dark room or just sit in my car with
Mhm.
everything off and just
Yeah.
really, really listen for Him to tell me what to do.
Mhm.
And
Awesome,
that's what I do.
awesome. All right, all right. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. Jump back to you, Dion. If you had a chance to talk to the younger Dion, and you could give her just a little snippet of advice, things that you know now that you wish you knew then, what would be that one thing that you would love to have shared with the younger Dion that you think would have helped her, navigate adversities of life?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's a real good question. Younger Dion, what would I say to her? Um, I would say listen. I would say listen. I would say listen more. I would say trust and trust more. And when I say trust, is that although my grandmother, my mother instilled Christ in me, right? It took me a minute to get there. So I
Mhm.
think it would be more so listening to them and trusting them to a point where I knew you guys got it right, but what
Mhm.
about me? So I think I would
Mhm.
be that listen and trust more,
Okay.
especially for younger, because
Mhm.
again, want to do things my way.
All right. That's fair. That's fair. And that's honest.
Hmm.
Felisa, what would you say to young Felisa? What would you tell her? Just a little
Uh,
nugget of advice.
well, the younger Felisa, there are two things I would tell her. One is what Dion said, which is, to listen more. I think that I felt like I had growing up, I felt like I had to protect myself. Like, there are certain things that happened when I was growing up. And so I felt like I needed to be extremely independent and I needed to not cause issues. So I tried to take care of a lot of things myself. And so I, there were times I thought I was much smarter than I was. And, I wasn't. So should have listened more. And then I should have asked more questions about certain things instead of trying to figure out so much on my own. And then the other thing was that, I've always been a reader and a learner. And so I had not only this academic love for the word of God. I had that, and and I came to Christ when I was 8, just because I wanted to know Him, and I needed to be a part of whatever was of anything where somebody would come and they would die for me. And plus, they were talking about those pearly gates, and I needed to see this place where all these jewels were. So had all that going on, but I wish I had would have understood that my relationship with God was so much more than Him saving me, but was Him being Lord of my life. I didn't get that I didn't get that in the early part of my walk with God. So there were things I never, it was a long time before I fully submitted to His will. And I wish I had understood that earlier in, my life. I think I wouldn't have made some of the mistakes that I've made. Um,
Mhm.
In marriage and just trying to go through my own little checklist that I had going on. Well, finish college, I might as well do something, so I'll get married. So it's because I got to have these kids before I turn 30. Because after I turn 30, and I haven't any kids, so all of that little crazy stuff had going on. Like I told you, I wasn't as
Mhm.
smart as I thought I was. So anyway, yeah.
All right, all right. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. And and Beverly, what would you tell that 10-year-old Beverly who had to grow up like overnight? If you could drop her a little nugget on what she was getting ready to go into, what would you say to her?
I think I would say more than anything, uh, it's okay to ask for help first and foremost. Um, because when you're 10, you don't know. You can actually ask for help, and people will try to help you. Um, and that, because I've always known that God is my father, and I always have known that He's got me. Even if I didn't quite understand it all, I've always known that. So He's always been who I have relied heavily on. Um, but I think I would say I could make you can actually trust some of the other people that are around. You can ask for help, um, and that it's okay not to know everything.
Mhm.
It's okay to be a kid. And at the end of the day, it will all work out. You'll be okay in the end. And just be grateful for what you do have and understand that whatever's going to be will be. You don't have to change everything right now. That would
Awesome.
be what I tell her.
That's good. That's good advice. I think you all gave some great advice to your younger selves. So, with that said, before we close out for this evening, I want to take an opportunity to celebrate. So, if there's anything in particular, announcements, projects, activities of any kind that you all are doing, I'd love for you to share that so we can celebrate and support, and of course pray it up that it be successful. I'll start with you, Felisa. Anything exciting you got going on, working on, involved with?
Well, I have. Oh, sorry. I have some exciting things going on, both personally and professionally. Just amazing how God has this mixture. Like there are things that are going on in your life that seem so hard, but in the midst of all that adversity, He's at work because he's never just doing one thing. And so I'm really excited about, some of the things that we're able to do, that I'm able to do at work, uh, through the support of an anonymous donor. So we received $2.9 million to repair 90 homes. And then we just received another $80,000 for the capacity building plan. And so I guess what I'm really excited about is that the program and everything was my design. So the presentation to the anonymous donor who believed in what we were doing, uh, she came on board, bought into it wholeheartedly. And we were at a meeting with the board from uh, Texas A&M for this dental clinic that my organization developed. And then, so when I was holding them accountable for their engagement plan with the community to provide effective and a broad-based dental care for the community, because that's what the money was donated for. The anonymous donor told my boss, "Oh my gosh, I just love her. She's amazing." And and to be able to hear that, of course, I was in my late 50s by the time I got my dream job, but God is never late. Look how old Moses was when he had to go back and deliver the children of Israel. So that's some of the exciting things that are happening for me now.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And just another testimony that God is still in the blessing business, doing big things
Yes.
through you, using you
Yes.
as a servant. So that's awesome. Dion, what's going on in Dion's world? Anything exciting you want to share? Any projects you're working on? Anything of that like?
I mean, overall, everything is pretty good, right? Any projects, that I have some business things that I've been working on that are going to finally come to fruition. So I'm excited about those. From a professional standpoint, I'm stable, at my job, and I love what I do. But I think I would have to say, not completely 100%. Everything is perfect, but I feel good. I mean, I'm balanced. I'm good. Everything is all right.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is just kind of like smooth sailing. I don't know who sings that song, but somebody sings that song.
Well, if you want to,
Is
you want
there
to
a
break out
song
in
called
song.
"Smooth Sailing," Dion?
I don't know, but it sounds
Or
good.
is it easy like Sunday morning?
Oh, that's what it is. There's smooth sailing in that song, right? I don't know. But anyways, easy like Sunday morning. So overall it's pretty good. Nothing too exciting. It's just everything is copacetic and easy right now. So
Well,
yeah.
that's good. We'll definitely be keeping in prayer your business ventures that are,
Mhm.
coming into fruition, and we're excited to see how that's going to pan out for you, and
Thanks.
and celebrating your successes and all of that. So that's awesome. And last but not least, Beverly, anything you'd like to share that's going on in Beverly's world?
Oh yeah. Actually, this week we found my HR company. This week we got a letter from Dallas ISD that we were awarded a contract to do the recruiting services for them. So we are very happy. It's a 5-year contract, so we are very happy about that. Um, and then from the hospice company, we also got well, not an award exactly, but um, we've been going through a long uh, long ADR process where they were keeping money until we finished all of these audits and all of that. We've made it through all of that, and they are now releasing a huge sum of money to us finally. So we are very, very thankful for that because it's been a while coming, and so it is a relief that it is finally on its way here. And then lastly, I got a fiveplex a couple of months ago and have gone through several contractors, just just several contractors, and it's been one of those. What's going to happen this week? I now have the best contractors who can actually understand exactly what I want And we are now moving straight forward ahead to getting this thing done and getting it rented out. So we are very, very happy about all
All
that. So
right.
I cannot complain. And in my personal life, I just have no complaints at the moment. So
Hey, hey,
I'm good.
again, God is good. God is good. You all are doing some phenomenal work. I'm proud of each and every one of you, and you should, of course, be proud of yourselves. And just, you sound happy, you sound at peace, you sound fulfilled in everything that you're doing, and that's the name of the game. To live a life of service, to be thrilled to get up each morning, to know that you have an opportunity to impact and influence lives in so many different ways. So, the world is a better place, but because of the three of you being present in it, and being able to serve in the various ways that you do. So, with that said, that brings our podcast to an end. I am so grateful to have had you ladies on board with me today. It has been a pleasure to hang out with you, to get to know you in another different way. I mean, of course, I see you quite frequently, but not in this necessarily this intimate space. So just gives me that much more appreciation and respect for the women that you are, and just more reason to love on you that much more. So thank you for this pleasure and this privilege in being with me this evening. And for our listeners who've tuned in, if you've enjoyed what you've heard, please like, please share, please subscribe to the channel, please comment on it. We would love your feedback, and love others to tune in to episodes like this. If they can be of benefit to empowering and impacting their lives. And so, as we close out with the Blessings in the Street podcast, remember that here on this platform, your story is your glory, your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. So until next time, I'm your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and we will have an exciting show up for you again. So until then, be blessed, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you later.